Okay, hi, this is Robin, and I'm just going to be taking you through a few different ways of rigging a puppet in After Effects. So, in After Effects here, just going to make a new comp. We'll go 1080p, and right here I have the puppet that I'm going to use. This guy's a bit weird because he's got no legs, but I need to rig him up anyway, so I figured this is the way. So yeah, we'll just got him in the comp here. You can see there he is, this badass demon dude. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is parenting and moving the anchor points around to get your points of articulation. Cool, okay, so basically we just need to separate out the different points that we need to articulate. So you take your mask tool, that's the shortcut is G, and before I do that I'm just going to duplicate this a few times. So if we think about what different segments we're going to need, we'll have one for the body. I'll put another one here so we can bend at the waist, so that's 2, another one for the head, so that's 3, and then we'll have 2 more for each arm. That makes 7, so I'm just going to duplicate this layer a few times. Cool, so layer 1 is just going to be the lower body here, and we're just going to mask this off something like this. I'm going to do this quite quickly because, you know, although this technique's fine, this isn't the main thing that I want to show you guys. So, and then we'll have his upper body here. We're probably going to tweak these a little bit in a minute, but that's okay. And then we'll do his head. This is another layer. And if I was doing this properly, I would label all of these so I knew what they were, but I'm not going to bother. Do this, give this a nice, try and give this a nice round edge. Another thing, if I was doing this properly, I would separate these in Photoshop and give them nice kind of rounded edges and things rather than just doing it with masking, but this will give you guys the idea of how it works. But that'll do. Okay, so we just want to do this quickly anyway. So let's just quickly label these. So that's left. There's left. 1, and this is his body. Okay. Okay, and then we're just going to parent these up. So when you're parenting, you want to start with the kind of the main kind of chunk, if you like, of the body. If you have a puppet with legs, normally that's going to be the torso or the waist or something like that, so you can move the whole thing by that area. This guy doesn't have any legs, so we're just going to use this lower part. And then we'll parent, use the little pick whip here to drag torso to the body, to parent that to that. We'll drag the head to the torso to parent that to that. The lower arm, or upper arm I should say, sorry, kind of bicep area, will parent that to the torso. The forearm will parent to the upper arm, and then same on the other side. So upper arm to the torso, and lower arm, forearm to the upper arm. Okay, so that's all good. So basically what that means, if we move the body, we move the whole thing. See, so see, that's just that layer, but when we move it, we move the whole thing. Cool. Parenting, you guys probably know that. That's fine. Then what we need to do is move the anchor points, and to do that you can use the pan behind tool. I like to use shortcuts, so that's just the Y button to get to that. And just going to get the center point here, the anchor point, and drag that down here. And then, sorry, rotation tool, which is W. Yeah, you can spin him around. Again, it moves everything else. So then we go to the torso. And again, get your pan behind tool. That's Y. Grab the anchor point and move it up to, say, here. get the rotation tool, you can see what's happening. You know, he can spin around, it moves the whole thing. And for the head, again, grab the anchor point for the layer, move it up to just kind of the neck. And this is going to look a little ropey because he hasn't really been designed to work this way, but it will give you the idea. For the arm, same again, anchor point comes up here to the shoulder, forearm, anchor point goes to the elbow, same again on the other side, anchor point goes up there, and there we go. Okay, so that's, you know, a very quick, basic, dirty rig, and what we can do is get our rotation tool, and then we can rotate each of these layers independently. I'll just turn the mask off to see that a little better. So there we go, we can move his arm up here, we can move this arm up here, but then we want to move the whole arm, we can move, you know, move this arm, and the cool thing is, because we've parented it all up, yes, by moving the torso, we move everything else that's attached to the torso, you know, and this is cool, you know, it's great for some puppets. It gives you a kind of shadow puppet kind of look, which can be really nice in some instances. And I've done stuff like, I've done kind of insects and beetles and stuff like this, because they're kind of naturally segmented anyway, you know, and it looked fine for those. The problem is, I mean, this is kind of quick and dirty anyway, but the problem is, you see here on his elbow, once you move it too far, you get these kind of weird segments, and, you know, it's kind of limiting. So yeah, that's one method. Let's give that a name. I'll just call that parenting. So that's one way we can do it. Another way we can go is use the Puppet Warp tool. Now, the Puppet Warp tool was introduced a couple of versions ago into After Effects, and everyone went, wow, look at this, because it's pretty cool. You can do some really cool stuff with it. Yeah, so we've got a puppet here, and Puppet tool sits up here. That's Command P if you want to know the shortcut. And so what we're going to do now is drop our puppet pins on, stick one here, and what it does is it generates a mesh over the whole of your image, which is visible. So anything that's not transparent, it'll generate this mesh over, and you use the puppet points to deform that mesh. So we'll put another one here, we'll put one here in the middle of his chest, and we'll put one here on top of his head, and one on each elbow, and then one on his hands. Okay, and you see the mesh here? The triangles are really, really big, so what we're going to do is just increase the number of triangles to get a bit more detail in our mesh. Okay, sorry, just had a crash there, so if there was a weird glitch there, for some reason After Effects just freaked the hell out. So yeah, I take the triangles up to 700, and you can see the mesh is a lot more detailed, and it's encapsulating the whole thing, and that's cool. So basically each of these puppet points we can now use to pull around and deform the mesh and move our guy. And that's cool. And then we can use the starch tool, which does a similar kind of thing. And you can basically use the starch tool to isolate certain parts of your puppet that you don't want to move. So now, let me put some starch here. That's too much, so I need to take the extent down. There we go. And some starch here. Again, take the extent down a little bit. So now, when we move this puppet point, you see how the arm, only bends at the elbow. Like this bit where we put the starch isn't bending. Okay, just undo that to get it back. And so that's really cool. I mean, you can, just from one puppet, we've put these, one image, we've put these puppet points in, and we can pretty much, we can move this guy however we want. We can deform him, pose him around and stuff. The thing that's annoying, though, is, for example, if I want to move his whole arm down, I have to move his elbow, move his hand, kind of figure out where it's going to be. If I want to move it, if I want to animate with it, there's no bezier on the puppet points. You can't get nice curves. There's no hierarchy. It's just kind of a pain in the ass to. Excuse me, I shouldn't use bad language. It's kind of a pain to animate with. So yeah, it looks great, and you can do some cool stuff with it. But yeah, it's kind of a pain to animate with. So that's no good either. Well, it is good, but it's not perfect. So what we're going to do is kind of somewhere in between. So what we want is to use the modifying mesh properties of the puppet tool with the hierarchy of the parenting. So when we move this guy, when we move the upper arm, the whole arm moves. Whereas for this guy, we move the upper arm, the hand gets left behind, the whole forearm gets stretched out and weird, and he's just having a bad day. Okay, so new composition. And we'll get our puppet in. I'm actually going to do the rigging in a pre-comp. So I'll leave him at his own size. So yeah, I'm going to pre-compose this layer. Where is the... There it is. I'm so used to using the shortcuts, I forget where things are sometimes. I move all attributes to the new composition. And yeah, in puppet comp 1, that's fine. We know what that is. And so here we go. I'm actually going to make the composition square because we're going to be using some expressions, and I'm not very good at maths, and so it's easier for me to work out the expressions of positions and things if the composition is square. In fact, I'm going to make it a little bigger than he is, so he's got a bit more room to, wave his arms around and do whatever it is he wants to do. Yeah, that looks good. So, the first thing we're going to do is make a new null object rather. And these null objects are basically going to be our pivot points. So I'm going to put one down here to act as the base, and shrink it down a little bit as well. And just duplicate that and pull it up. Let me think. Where do I want him to pivot from? I want him to be able to pivot at the waist. So I'll put one there. And it's the pivot point itself is the top left-hand corner here, where the anchor point is. You see, if we spin that, it spins around that. So yeah, we'll put one up here, kind of, I guess, where his pelvis would be if he had one. I don't know if he does or not. We'll pull another one up to the middle of his chest. I'm going to put one on each shoulder. That way they can parent to the middle of his chest, and I can rotate them so he can kind of shrug his shoulders and whatnot. What was my last one I made? Here we go. One on the elbow and one on the hands. I'm not going to get into the hands. I would, for the full rig, I'm going to rig all these fingers separately, but for the purposes of that, I don't think I need to. It's just going over stuff kind of more than once. I think this should give you the idea of what we're all about. and one final one. No, I'll put one here on the neck, and then one final one on top of the head. The reason why I need one on the top of the head, even though that's not a pivot point, that's going to be a handle, if you like. In fact, actually, I'll put some there and there so we can flex the hands. Okay, and now I'm just going to go through and name all of these. So we'll call this base. The next one we'll call waist. Wrong waist. Next one up would be chest. That's right shoulder. Left shoulder. Left elbow. Left wrist. And left hand. Then that's right elbow. Right wrist. Oh, if you wonder how I'm going through these with keyboard shortcuts, it's just Apple and up and down arrow. And that's right hand. That's his neck. And that is his head. Okay. And so they're all where they need to be. And now we need to parent these up the same way that you would if you'd broken a puppet up into sections. So we're going to have everything, because this guy doesn't have legs, he's just kind of rooted to the spot. So he's going to be rooted to this point here. So the base is going to be the thing that we parent everything to. So the waist parents to the base. The chest parents to the waist. The two shoulders also going to parent to the chest. The neck will parent to the chest. Let's move this up here so I have a little more room. Okay, so yeah, so we have the neck parenting to the chest. The head will parent to the neck. And so left elbow needs to go to left shoulder. Left wrist needs to go to left elbow. Left hand needs to go to left wrist. And then the same on the other side. So the right elbow here needs to go to right shoulder. Right wrist needs to go to right elbow. Right hand needs to go to right wrist. And that's everything done. Okay, all good so far. Now, what we're going to do is use the puppet tool, drop a puppet pin right on the anchor point of each of our null objects, or where the anchor point of each of the null objects is, but on the daemon puppet, on the puppet layer itself. So we'll pop one here. Here. One here. To the neck. And then the head. You can see here the mesh is cutting off his elbow, so I'll have to do something about that in a moment, but that's okay. Okay, so that's him all done. yeah, where the mesh is kind of cutting him off in a couple of places. So I'm just going to save that real quick and then put it up to, say, 600 triangles. There's always a little bit of just kind of jigging around with this. I might put the expansion up a little bit. Okay, that's okay, that's all right. Now we're going back to our puppet points themselves, and we're going to name them just the same, basically the same as we did with the null objects. So, I mean, you don't have to do this, but it just makes everything a lot easier. So puppet point 1, let's click on that, is the base. Puppet pin 2 is the waist. And just name these guys chest and neck. Okay, now just to make things a little easier for myself, I'm just going to rearrange these guys. Okay, so waist, then neck, then head, then shoulders. Yeah, then we'll have that arm, then that arm. That makes sense. So, yeah, chest, neck, head, then right arm, then left arm. Okay, so now these are both all in the same order as these, which is just going to make things a little easier. Okay, yeah, so now we are good to go. So what we need is an expression which is going to link the position, this value here, the position of the puppet point to the position of this null object. So we want the position of this to match the position of this. We can do it with this position, this expression right here, which I just kept copied. Okay, you need to twirl, open the little thing there, then Alt and click on the stopwatch, and that opens up your expression window, and then just paste or type in your expression. And what we need to do is change this part here that says null layer's name. We'll change that to base, which is the name of the null object which we want it to point to. And then we can just copy that, and we can go on to the next one. We can go on to the waist, just paste that in, and then we need to change the name of the layer here to waist. And because we all named our puppet points the same as our null objects, then we know what they are, and it just makes life a little easier. So that will be chest, and so yeah, Alt, click on the stopwatch, paste or type in your expression, and we'll change each one. This is head. Okay, I'm probably just going to flick ahead to when I've done this. Okay, so that's the last of them done. Put in the same expression. So yeah, it's telling it. So just have a look at that. So yeah, we've got defining our parameters, looking at left hand, the null object, which is left hand, the layer rather, which is left hand, and there we go. So what these are now doing is that each of these puppet points is taking its position data from our null objects, which means if we move our null objects, it then deforms the puppet. And what we can do is we can use a rotation tool, and look at that. We keep our hierarchy intact, and we can rotate everything, and everything kind of keeps its proportions, and happy days. Oh, that's getting a little bit weird. Basically, we need to should be, there we go. Yeah, we need to put some starch in this and get it going a little bit. So yeah, we're just using the starch tool to select the areas that we don't want to bend. Take them up a little bit. We've got a little bit of a problem here where the mesh is joining over the head. I may have to either play with the mesh or separate that out into a separate layer. But it's not so bad. I'm going to put a lot of starch in the head here because we don't want the head to keep morphing. Really, we just want this little bit to bend. There we go. Okay, and also I'm just going to put a few more puppet pins into these kind of tentacles down here because I don't want them to move when the rest of him moves. Or maybe a little bit, but not too much. And I'm not going to parent them to a null object or anything because, well, for the same reason, because they're not going to be moving. But I'm just going to put the puppet points here to basically hold these parts in place. Okay, now let's see. So if we go to our base, we can rotate. You can kind of lean around a little bit. You can rotate from the waist. How's that looking? That's looking okay. I mean, there's quite a nice range of flex there. The chest is basically that. What that's going to do is, yeah, kind of twist him about the shoulders. And you don't want to do that too much because, you know, the rib cage itself won't actually move. Well, you know, he's a crazy demon, so who knows what happens. But on a person, the rib cage itself wouldn't move. And the neck will be we can move his head back and forth. Okay, well, yeah, I have a little bit of distortion coming out on this shoulder, and that's because if we look at the mesh, yeah, you can see here this mesh is basically it's kind of the same part. So as the horn moves up, it's pulling the shoulder up with it. We need to separate that out. I can either separate that on a different layer or by messing with the mesh settings, but I'm not going to do that now because, you know, I think you guys get the idea. And yeah, and we can just animate. We can just use the rotation values here to animate the guy. I mean, I would play with this a bit more before I actually, you know, did any animation with it because there's still, you know, there's some kind of weird stuff happening with a little bit of morphing where we don't really want it. But basically, what we have is the kind of the nice morphing abilities of the puppet tool with the hierarchy that you get from using the null objects. You know, keeps everything nicely in proportion and gives you a nice base to animate from. You can move everything around, you know, and just animate with that. So I hope that's useful. You can get a little bit more in depth with this stuff. If you want to look at dynamic clothing that moves so that you warp in relation to where parts of the body are underneath it, you can kind of get into stuff like that. It involves some more work with expressions, but if you're comfortable with that, and you want to play around with it, you can do some really cool stuff. So I hope that helps. And yeah, have fun with your After Effects puppets. Thank you.